Hello everybody, Luke Schulte, Field of Grounds for Beck's Hybrids. It's now the 1st of April. We've had incredibly mild weather with some sporadic warm-up spells this spring. Is it time to start thinking about terminating our cereal rye, our wheat cover crop? Well, regardless of your strategy, whether you like to plant green or whether you prefer to kill that and terminate that cover crop first and then plant, there are a couple things we need to take into account in terms of management along the way. Now, determining when really revolves around answering three questions. Do we have adequate temperature? When are we more probable to plant? And lastly, are we planting corn or soybeans following that cereal rye or that wheat cover crop? In order for glyphosate to work effectively, we need adequate ambient temperatures. And I call it the 100 to 110 degree rule. What I mean by that is we really want 3 consecutive days in which our daytime highs and daily lows accumulate to about 100 or 110 degrees in order for glyphosate to work effectively. We used to think it was all about daytime temperature, but recently we've discovered that these systemic herbicides like glyphosate, nighttime temperature plays a pivotal role. So we really want nights in that 40 or above and daytime highs in the 60s at minimum in order to make that glyphosate application and expect it to work successfully in terminating that cover crop. Secondly is, when are we more probable to plant? And that's important for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, once we terminate that cover crop, we no longer have a crop that's wicking and pulling moisture from our soil environment. And secondly, once we kill it off, if it lays down, it's going to create a mat that sunlight can no longer dry out that soil environment and give us the planting conditions we desire. In my experience, when it comes to cereal rye, we terminate it at 14 or 16 inches and below. For the most part, that cereal rye will remain upright or erect, still allowing sunlight to penetrate that canopy and allowing it to dry out. However, once it gets bigger than that and we terminate it, it tends to lay over. So if we're looking at managing a larger cereal rye cover crop bigger than that 14 to 16 inches, I think we got to employ one or two strategies. Either plant it green, then terminate it afterwards, or look at the weather forecast, spray it off, wait about 3 days, and make sure we don't get a rain in between herbicide application and planting to ensure that we don't now have a crop that tends to want to fall over and really creating a tough environment to get it to dry out. Then the last question is, are we planting corn or soybeans behind that cereal rye or wheat cover crop? If we're planting soybeans, there's not a lot of management considerations we need to take into account. But if we're planting corn or planting a grass into a grass, we have to be mindful of two things. First and foremost is nitrogen. We're going to pay a higher carbon penalty in corn following cereal rye or wheat just due to all that biomass. According to Purdue, what they found is the nitrogen that cereal rye takes up, so any nitrogen that was left over from last fall's crop or any mineralized nitrogen, only about 9 to 13% of that nitrogen that cereal rye takes up will be released in time for that successive corn crop to utilize. So it's really important due to that, as well as the additional biomass, that we account for the early N requirement that is required in a corn following cereal rye application. We found that in corn following soybeans at PFR, that is proven to apply 60 pounds with the planter. However, when we're looking at corn following cereal rye, we want to bump that rate by an additional 30 to 40 units to account for that higher carbon penalty. And then lastly, if we're planting corn into cereal rye or grass into grass, there's what's known as called an allelopathic effect. And the longer we allow that cereal rye to continue to live and we don't terminate it, it's producing toxins that could potentially inhibit the growth and development of that successive corn crop. So just some things to keep in mind that hopefully help you determine when is the right time for your operation, as well as the management to ensure that that corn or soybean following that cover crop gets off to the best start possible. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. Thanks for tuning in.